edition of Iowa Prep Sports Pick'ems. Jeff Johnson, K.J. Pilcher, Jeff Linder, down here to my right, to your left. Just the screen just keeps getting better looking from this side on down. So, gentlemen, how's it going? We survived official week 1. We dive right into week 2, actually with a Thursday night game. We're taping this on Thursday afternoon with Dubuque Hempstead and Cedar Rapids, Washington on at Kingston Stadium tonight. So who's got that duty, first of all? Pilchy does, okay?
I will be out there.
So make sure you, at KJ Pilcher, his Twitter handle, he'll get you all the information that you will need live during that game. And then, of course, he'll have a story for you on the Gazette.com after the game is over sometime Thursday night. So let's dive into Friday for our pick'ems. I think that I'm pretty sure I went 10-0 last week. We're not 100% certain on this. Actually, I know I lost at least one game. So, but we'll try and get the standings next week after week 2 when we all do a little bit better. Let's kick right off with the Class 4A game between Bettendorf and Iowa City West. The 6th-ranked Bulldogs are 1-0. Iowa City West is 0-1. Bettendorf beat next door neighbor Pleasant Valley last week in the opener 20-6. West lost to Class 3A 5th-ranked North Scott 14-7. It looks like we all are thinking along the same lines here. KJ, what are those lines?
Well, first off, I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out to my partner in crime, I think for part of this year, Parker Leibolt is going to help me with some picks throughout the season.
Hi, Parker.
The man, the myth, the CPU legend. So he's a great sports fan and loves football and did a little research and came down with some picks, and have to say I agree with a lot of them. But Bettendorf, Iowa City West had a rough go with North Scott, and the fact I think you're the one that brought up before taping, only 12 yards rushing in week 1. When you think about Bettendorf only giving up 107 yards to PV, which is a run-oriented
attack
offense, and a team that runs the ball well, that's not a really high total. So that tells me, and they kept PV out of the end zone. That tells me Bettendorf's defense is really strong. You also look at what Babe Buey was able to do. I'm sure I'm kind of butchering his name. I think that was
Harrison.
His first name. We'll go that way. I think he was one of the kids that came over from Moline, was it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think so.
But he had a productive day in that game against Pleasant Valley. So I think given they have a playmaker at Bettendorf, their run defense seems to be pretty good. Puts a lot of weight on the shoulders of Marcus Morgan. We'll see if he can carry him through. But Parker and I are going with Bettendorf.
Jeff, you are as well.
I am as well. I think points are going to be awful hard to come by for West or against Bettendorf. They are at home. I think it's going to be another game a lot like what West saw last week against North Scott, and it might be a deal where 2 touchdowns wins it. And I think Bettendorf's going to be the team that gets there.
I think we got a clearer picture of what Marcus Morgan, the outstanding multi-sport athlete, is going to do in his future, in that this week he said he's getting a full baseball scholarship from the University of Iowa. And full one, folks. That's
full
big news.
Baseball scholarships
yes.
don't come around.
No, they're
day.
very rare, without question. So that kind of shows you exactly what Coach Rick Heller thinks of Marcus on the baseball diamond. And apparently that's going to be the direction he's going. That being said, he's a terrific quarterback as well. He's got a lot of inexperienced dudes around him, and that's going to, I would assume, will continue to kind of gel as the season goes on. But right now it might be a little rough, and they're playing some really good opponents. Thus, I'm going with Bettendorf as well to beat Iowa City West. Let's move on now to the what is it, north side of Marion, right? Since Marion, the Indians always call themselves being
South
from the
side.
south side. Linmar, he'll host Class 4A number 9 Cedar Rapids Kennedy. Both teams are 1-0. Kennedy brushed back Cedar Rapids Jefferson 21-10 last Friday night, and Linmar overcame Dubuque Senior 27-20. Jeff, that maybe a little bit closer score in the Kennedy game than what we thought last week, but
Definitely.
I think that might be a sign that that Jefferson's a pretty improved ball club. What do you see here
Yeah.
for the Cougars going against the Lions?
And I think it was probably a wake-up call for Kennedy, too. And I think I thought the Linmar game was a little closer than I expected it to be. So I'm going to go with Kennedy, but I sure don't. I think it's going to be a competitive ball game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means.
KJ?
Yeah, both scores last week were probably a little bit closer than expected, even though we did say Jefferson probably was going to keep it closer than in the past just because they were going to be a little bit better. Whether it was Jefferson's better or Kennedy not really hitting their peak. Linmar might be showing signs of really kind of hitting the ground running here in the third season with PJ. I think this was a group that, if I remember correctly, in the preseason said, they're finally starting to work out with the freshmen and really being able to convey what PJ wants from them when it comes to practices and the offense and defense and drills and stuff like that. So that's a sign of them kind of grasping what he's doing. So, this is going to be a really good game. I know. I think this was one Parker went back and forth on, and Parker and I decided to go with Kennedy just because, I think they had 5 sacks against Jefferson. I think defensively they might be a little bit stronger at this point than the Lions, but we'll see.
Also going with Kennedy, raise your hand if you would have had Brantley Koski as the leading rusher for the Cougars in Game 1, considering you've got, K'Ron Hendred, Max White, Cade Parker's a good running back when he gets the opportunity to tote the football. But Koski had 116 yards for Kennedy, which ran for almost 300 against Jefferson.
Only 7 carries.
Yes, and only 7 carries. Thank you. Good point on that one. Marcus Orr was kind of a one-man wrecking machine for Linmar. He had 248 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, and then ran for another 77 and a touchdown. So I'm guessing that's who the Cougars might focus on this week defensively. Yeah, I think Linmar is an improved ball club, no question, but I just think Kennedy's probably got a little too much for the Lions at this point. So thus far, through 2 games, we all agree, which is just kind of amazing at this point. Let's move on to our next game.
Really quick, do you know who's covering the Linmar Kennedy game for us? Do you remember?
That is Jeff Linder, at JT Linder.
One thing I'd be interested to see, and Kennedy's got a pretty good defense. He may not do something like that. But when you have somebody like Marcus Orr at quarterback who can run the ball, and you've got a middle line, you got a linebacker like Cade Parker, it'll be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if they kind of brush off the old monster back or shadow back kind of thing where you tell Parker, that's your man. Mm-hmm. No matter what other keys are going on, you follow him. Wherever he goes, you're in his back pocket. It'll be interesting to see if there's some kind of game plan like that. But Kennedy's defense might be balanced enough that they don't need to go with something like that.
Class 4A number 10, Cedar Rapids Prairie will be at Pleasant Valley. That's our next game here. The Hawks are 1-0 and Pleasant Valley 0-1. We already talked about Pleasant Valley's 20-6 loss to Bettendorf last week. Prairie all over Cedar Rapids, Washington, 56-7. I believe that was 49-0 at halftime, Jeff Linder, because you were there. 49-7. Okay. Just keep on keeping on with that single wing offense. Nick Pierce on 157 yards rushing, 10 carries, 3 touchdowns. Tariq Amir, 130 yards rushing on only 14 carries, 3 touchdowns. I'm not real good at math, but that's almost 300 yards out of 2 guys and 6 touchdowns. What did you see from Prairie, and can Pleasant Valley possibly slow down this this attack offensively?
Well, it's not going to be 56-7. I think they can slow them down a little. They're not going to stop them. Prairie's not a one-trick pony this year. I mean, they've got several different ways to go. Nick Pearson says we're not the Keegan show anymore. So, for better or worse, and last week I'd say for the better. Just that balance, and they can throw the ball. They got several guys that can run it. I think it's a pretty potent team. Mark Bliss said it was the best opener he's had in 5 years now there at Prairie. I'm going to go with Prairie to go on the road and win. I think it's going to be a little bit of a grind, but I'll go with the Hawks.
KJ, would you agree?
Talked a little bit about Bettendorf earlier and what they did with PV, and they were able to put some yards up on the ground against PV. With that, kind of dual attack that they showed in week one, you can kind of expect the same. I would think they'd be able to put up the same kind of numbers. You saw what Prairie's defense was able to do with Washington. PV wasn't able to get in the end zone against Bettendorf. And you bring up a good point that duality in an offense. Hunter Williams hit, I think it was
100 yards passing.
Johnny Jones.
Johnny Jones.
3 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown. When you can pound the ball, and you have that kind of diversion type offense, the tricky offense that they run out there, and you can pound the ball, and they're going to have to sell themselves to stop the run. Prairie's showing that they can throw over the top. That's going to make them so much tougher. Parker and I are going with Prairie.
I am as well. So we'll make it a clean sweep. 3 games. We all agree with each other. Let's move on to Game 4 out of Kingston Stadium tomorrow night. Cedar Rapids Jefferson 0-1 against Muscatine 0-1. The Jayhawks continue their in-town tour. I don't believe they leave. What'd you say? They leave the Metro one time this year. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Which is pretty
leave
crazy.
Southwest Cedar Rapids.
Southwest Cedar Rapids, because Prairie's in there as well.
Prairie's the only other game outside of a trip to Waterloo that they leave Kingston.
We talked about Jefferson playing Kennedy tough last week before falling 21-10. Muscatine lost a tough one as well, 28-25 to Davenport Central. Who wants to take off here first? KJ, what do you and Parker have for this one?
We have Jefferson. The Jayhawks, I still think, we said it since, day one. They're going to be better than what they were a year ago. How good that is, still yet to be determined. But this is a game that they certainly can win and should win and need to win if they want to keep building on that. I think even though it was 21-10, I think that shows that they can compete with some really good teams since we had high expectations for Kennedy. Depth, I think, is going to be a problem. And, can you put 4 quarters? I don't think they have the depth, and that's been kind of a recurring theme. But, they're high on a physical defense, and if they can play strong for 4 quarters and build up some depth, it's going to help them. So, but we're going with the Jayhawks.
Jeff.
I'm going to go with Jefferson as well. I know they didn't win last week, but they have to have come out of last week with some confidence, with some belief that they can do some things this season. They're entering a 4-game stretch now. I think I would call them all swing games that are winnable games. They got Muscatine, Linn-Mar, Wash, Waterloo West in 4 straight weeks. And I think the season's going to be defined in those 4 games. If they could get 2 or 3 of those, maybe all 4, it could be a heck of a year over on the west side. And but I think it's got to start this week, and because you don't want the train kind of starting to run downhill at 0-2. And if they can get this one, I think it could be a really nice year for Jefferson.
Yeah, how do you bounce back, especially physically? Because I think Kennedy's probably one of the more physical teams that you'll face. So that would be kind of a question for me as well. But you say that Muscatine loses by 3 points too against Davenport Central. So how do the Muskies, who I think are an improved team from what they have been here the last couple of years, how are they going to bounce back as well? Sam Wieskamp is Muscatine's starting quarterback. He's only 6'2", so I'm not sure if that's like the brother of Iowa basketball player Joe Wieskamp, or obviously some sort of relation, certainly. I'm going with Jefferson as well. Like Jeff said, this is a big game. It's one that, if you want to improve your season and, get the program started to turn around a little bit, this is kind of a game that you got to have, and especially at home as well. I'm going with the Jayhawks. Let's go down to Class 3A for our next game. Number 2, Cedar Rapids Xavier 1-0 at Decorah 0-1. Xavier beat Iowa City Regina 35-0 last Friday night, and Decorah lost 36-7 to the top-ranked team in Class 2 at Walk-On. I'm going to start with you, KJ, because you saw Xavier. No Josh Volk, right?
No Josh Volk. He's day-to-day. He was stressed out. Ran off the field after the game and didn't look to be limping or anything. Coach Joyne Schulte after the game said he's day-to-day.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So we'll see. My guess is that they're just being really cautious. Because if you really look at what he's coming back from, it's been like
well less
10
than a year.
months.
Yeah.
And and this is a big kid. I don't have his numbers with me, but that it's not as easy being a bigger guy coming back from something like that. I'll relate it to Sam Stoll in wrestling, who had something similar, came back too soon and re-injured it, even though it's a different situation. But I think they're being a little, probably being safe. Because the kid does have a future, obviously, at the collegiate level that you got to keep in mind. And they still looked really good up front against Regina. The biggest question coming in, I think, was, how are they going to replace the likes of Quinn Schulte, Braden Stovey, and the weapons that they had in the backfield. Tyler DuPont looked really good, throwing for about 126 yards. They ran the ball. They kind of stalled early. But Jack Lux, a junior, came in and kind of provided them with a spark. On his very first varsity carry, ran 57 yards to set up a 1st and goal. DuPont can run the ball pretty well, pretty athletic. He's got a good connection with Tyler Wilkin, who's a receiver that was able to, I think, break off a 49-yard touchdown in that game. And the Xavier defense. You've got Herkett and some key, a couple key guys back, but there is a key a turn of events where Regina was driving, they recovered a fumble, turned that into 7 points. Then Regina gets the ball next, and Jacob Forsland returns an interception for a touchdown right before half. Really broke things open. So the Xavier defense is really strong as well again, and kind of has a knack for the turnover, at least in game 1 against Regina. So Parker and I are going with the Saints.
Jeff, I notice you are as well.
Yep.
I will say this is a long bus ride for the Saints.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth.
I don't think it's going to be a long bus ride home, though. How's this for a non-district schedule for Decorah? Waukon, Xavier, Western Dubuque, Crestwood.
That is a tough
That'll get you ready.
And you better hope you win your district.
Better win the district. There's just no room for error there. And Xavier's, 27 in a row now. 10 of those 27 have been by shutouts. I think it's going to be kind of close to that again this week. I think Xavier goes up there and wins comfortably.
Going with Xavier as well, and before we move on to the next game, wanted to throw a hearty congratulations to our good friend Darren Svensson up in Decorah, who got engaged last week to Katie Jo Kuhns, the former sports information director at Wartburg.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
apparently,
So 2 colleagues.
good people. Goob, you did good. I saw the ring. Thanks for making all the rest of us married guys look bad here with what we got our wives, but. Congratulations to those two. Good
You want
friends.
to hear a funny story about that?
Sure.
That found out this summer. Remember David Seaver from North Lynn?
Absolutely.
When I proposed to my wife, I didn't have a ring with me. And his grandmother, David Seaver's grandmother, actually took off her ring and gave it to me and said, "Give her this until you get her an engagement ring."
Wow.
And I didn't realize it till I saw her at one of the games this summer that was his grandma. So
And that you failed to give it back to her?
no,
Oh, okay. All right. I thought that was, you just kept
I'm a
it or
lot of
something.
things. I'm not a thief.
Let's move on to another Class 3A game here. Marion 0-1 at West Delaware 0-1. The Indians lost at home last week to Washington, Iowa 27-6. West Delaware lost to Dubuque Wahlert in tough fashion 17-15. I believe Wahlert scored late in that game to win, if I remember correctly. I'll kick it off here because I saw Marion last week. I think Washington's got a chance to be a really good football team. Good quarterback, good running back. Defense looks very solid as well. Marion is still trying to find its way. Coach Tim Lovell's kind of employed a new offense, option-oriented attack, because of the personnel that he lost and the personnel that he has. The Indians have under 30 players on the varsity roster as well right now, so the numbers are tough. They're still trying to find, I think, the right quarterback. Line play up front was not real good. Washington stacked the box most of the game, 9 guys, even 10 guys up front, and dared Marion to pass, and Marion couldn't. And defense kind of hung in there, but eventually Washington pulled away there in the second half. So it's a work in progress, certainly for the Indians. West Delaware coming off a tough loss to Wahlert. Just because it's at Brownfield, I'm going with West Delaware. Guys, what do you think? KJ is going to be there, by the way, at KJ Pilcher.
I will be there. Parker and I are going with West Delaware. One of the things West Delaware kind of had work against them, some turnovers that plagued them a little bit. You can clean those things up. Things work out a lot better, and we'll see. They're right now going to go with the Hawks.
I will as well. Neither of those teams kicked off the season probably the way they wanted last week. Marion didn't do much offensively. West Delaware lost to a team that went 0-9 last year. So two teams that, imagine have their coach's attention this week in practice. And I'm going to go with the Hawks because they're at home. And, I don't know how good either of these teams are going to be right now for the rest of the way.
Let's move on now to what is the town at West? It is just outside of Epworth. It is in Epworth, right? Western Dubuque, our number 1 team in Class 3A, will host Williamsburg. Both teams are 1-0. Williamsburg defeated West Marshall last week 14-7. Western Dubuque defeated Clinton 42-0. Jeff, I guess we'll start with you here. Western Dubuque is going to be a really, really good football team. And Williamsburg, despite losing a whole lot of good players, still was able to pick up a nice win over a traditionally strong program in West Marshall, right?
Yeah, really nice. Nice start for them. I think West Marshall beat them last year in the opener, and then Williamsburg got revenge in the postseason. So, they're a little bit ahead of where they were record-wise last year at this point. Different looking team now without Gage, Hayes, and Faber. But Western Dubuque certainly didn't do anything to, drop our opinion on them as the number 1 team in 3A. So I'm going to go Western Dubuque. I just think they've got a few too many weapons for Williamsburg and for just about anybody they play.
KJ, Williamsburg threw 19 passes last week. When was the last time a Kurt Ritchie team threw 19 passes in a game?
I don't know. That's a good question. But one of the things that has been common for Williamsburg is a strong defense. Usually on the defensive side of the ball, they are a pretty gritty bunch. Just kind of looking at things, They forced 3 turnovers. They won a turnover margin 3-0. That says a lot. They're going to need to do a lot of that. I think just to stay in this game, I'm kind of setting myself up for eating a lot of crow next week. But I really think that's probably the biggest. I think moral victories could be had here, competing with Western Dubuque. I just think Western Dubuque is one of the better teams outside of, maybe the top 5 in 4A in the entire state, or at least has the potential to be. You saw what they did to Clinton, Williamsburg. I think they would be happy to keep it close here. Parker and I are going to go with Western Dubuque.
I'm sorry we're being very boring here and very agreeable with each other this week, folks. It usually doesn't happen that way. So, but anyway, we've all picked the same team so far. I'm going with Western Dubuque here as well. So, let's go out to our next game in Class 3 and number 3. Solon 1-0 plays West Liberty 0-1. Solon was a convincing 35-7 winner over rival Mount Vernon last week, and West Liberty lost to Class 1A number 4 West Branch 28-6. KJ, this is a 2A team playing up against a really good 3A team. What do the Comets have to do maybe to keep this close and give themselves a chance?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not so sure I'm the right person to ask that because I don't think it'll be that close. I like Solon and certainly what they were able to do week 1 hasn't changed anything with that. One of the things that we didn't mention, we talked about Jason Andrig last week and Cam Miller, of course, but AJ Coons, he is an X factor for that team. With his ability to make big plays. They're 6 catches for 127 yards and a touchdown. That's gonna be tough for defenses to, try to contain. So I guess that's where West Liberty starts. Try to find a way to slow down that offense and keep things close. Last year they were able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It was 6-0, 7-0 in OT.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a blueprint there that they can establish. Never say they can't or won't, but I'm just going to go with Solon.
Jeff, West Liberty did rush for over 100 yards, about 120 last week, so maybe try and ground and pound a little bit and, and run the clock.
West Liberty's still a good team. I guess if nothing else, they've got the belief that they can compete with Solon because they did it last year. So that said, I think Solon's on a little bit higher level, and I'm going to go with Parker and KJ and probably you too, and go with the Spartans.
That is correct. I got Solon.
When you look at West Liberty's offense, you have Taylon Dangler and Will Esmoil that really shouldered the load for them. You're going to need to be a little bit more diverse than that against a team like Solon. But, if they can, maybe play smash mouth like you said,
yeah,
and even spread some things around, they certainly can.
Let's go up to Northeast Iowa. A couple of, in other sports, Northeast Iowa Conference rivals meeting, and a couple of top 10 ranked teams in Class 2A, as a matter of fact. In Crestwood at Waukon, both teams are 1-0. Crestwood with a nice 34-27 win last week over Charles City, and we already talked about Waukon beating down Decorah 36-7. I think if I saw right, Jeff, Creed Welch was just this side of pretty good the other night at quarterback for Waukon, right?
Yeah, 18 for 22, 202 yards, 2 scores.
That's pretty good.
I imagine that's got him up towards the top of the efficiency ratings in 2A. Yeah, that's really good. And you throw in 128 rushing yards from Dawson Barris, and that's a good start. And I would say this might be Waukon's toughest remaining game of the regular season, maybe. Crestwood's a good team, but I think Wacon's a special team this year, and I think they win.
KJ and Parker.
We're going to walk on. Just to echo a lot of, walk on is so, they're balanced with the ability to run the ball, pass the ball, that is going to cause a lot of fits for a lot of teams. And, Crestwood gave up 27 points to Charles City last week. But I think the key for Crestwood is going to be Reese Wilson, who's kind of get a little bit of a workhorse for him there in week 1, carrying the ball 26 times for 161 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, kind of feed the beast a little bit there, and kind of like what you guys were saying with West Liberty Solon, keep walk-on off the field. But that's easier said than done because walk-on's solid on the defensive side too.
I'm going with walk-on as well, though I do think this has a chance to be a pretty darn good football game. Walk-on won last year's matchup 22-7 at walk-on. You talked about Reese Wilson for Crestwood. Quarterback Carter Henry threw for 187 yards too, so that's a pretty balanced offensive attack. So maybe we'll see like 70-63. I don't know. Probably not that many points, but yeah, I do think this has a chance to be a good football game, and I agree with Jeff Linder in that I do think that Crestwood has a good football team, but Walk-On has the opportunity to have a special football team. So going with the Indians in this one. And our last game, HLV at Springville, a little 8-player action, I'm sorry. HLV 1-0, Springville 2-0. HLV defeated Colonesco last week, 60-14. Springville was a 45-16 winner over Trappola. Springville was one of those teams that did play in week 0, beating Winfield Mount Union in a thriller 41-38. So we know, guys, HLV is a traditionally strong program. Springville's had some good seasons as well, kind of rebuilding up towards what apparently will be another good season here. What should we expect?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think they're 2 good 8-player teams, and this is kind of a pivotal game. Not sure why. I'm not even sure who I picked. I think I picked HLV.
Yes, you
You
did.
have the Warriors.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll go with the Warriors, and we'll leave it at that.
KJ, you and Parker we actually have a disagreement finally in the very last game.
we have a discrepancy between picks here. Among the 3 of us, not Parker.
Yes,
and I.
yes.
Parker and I are on the same page. Springville, it's a program that, like you said, has been building towards this. A lot of these guys were kind of thrown into the fire as sophomores. They went 3-7 last year, 5-5, and they thought with the experience and kind of the veteran nature of their roster that this could be a year that they really kind of put things together. You've got Kyle Koppas, Spencer Demeen has been a nice producer running the ball. Here the first couple of weeks.
What a great name for a football player, by
Demeen.
the way. Demeen.
Yeah, so Springville, they're expecting some big things. They've got some high expectations, and this is certainly a good gauge to see where exactly they're at, in that rebuilding process. So we're going with Springville. See if Spencer Demeen can kind of carry the way, and Kyle Koppas pick and choose some spots to score. And
HLV threw 3 passes last week, completed 1. The other 2 were intercepted, which goes back to the old theory that when you throw the ball, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad. So can Springville stop what certainly HLV will want to do, and that is run the football? That's a good question. Pretty good run of athletes right now at HLV when you look at a lot of these guys were coming off coming off a baseball season in which they played in a state final. So I'm going with HLV. Kevin Smith's a tremendous coach. So is Joe Martin. No offense, Joe. And I just think the Warriors are going to find a way to win this football game. So
I would just throw this out there when you mentioned the rushing for HLV. I believe Springville has allowed just a little over 100 yards combined in their first two games on the ground against Winfield, Mount Union, and Tripola. So
there you go.
That could be where the game's won and lost there.
All right, our game's on Friday night at JEJE66 on Twitter. I will be at Springville for the HLB Springville 8-player matchup at KJ Pilcher. Pilchy's got West Delaware. And
Marion.
I'm totally blanking here. Marion,
West Delaware
sorry
and
about
Marion.
that.
And I'm going to throw this out there really quick. I asked Parker for an extra little pick since he is a CPU supporter. He's got CPU over Mount Vernon 28-21. So just throwing that out there for Parker, a big fan of the Storm and Pointers.
And at JT Linder, you're going to be in town at Linder and Kennedy, correct?
I'll be at the Battle for Robbins.
It's an important one in this big war that we're fighting, right? The battle for the Battle of Robbins. At thegazette.com, we'll have a running live scoreboard, all kinds of updates throughout the night. So hit that. We will have all kinds of stories, game stories. We'll have a full list of scores, everything that you could possibly want at thegazette.com. Folks, thanks for joining us for a Week 2 edition of Iowa Prep Sports Pick'ems. Enjoy the football on Friday night. We'll talk at you next week. Thanks. Keep your head on swivel.
Oh, my bad.